What's up everyone, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another year-end countdown. 2018 had plenty of great albums to offer, but I also found a lot underwhelming. There was so much undercooked material served that I started to get a stomach ache. The year clearly had its merits. If you would like to see my top 20 best albums of the year, tap the card that should be on screen right now, or else the link at the end of the video. But for now, I will be discussing the 10 most disappointing albums of the year, the ones that truly let me down. Disappointing to me absolutely can mean a bad album, because a bad album from a band that I love is definitely a letdown, but disappointing can also mean one that does have some great songs or singles on it, but it still felt underwhelming as a whole. Before we get to the actual top 10 list, I'm gonna quickly roll some dishonorable mentions of albums that I just felt didn't quite deserve a spot on the official list, but still didn't exactly do that much for me, even though I had expectations for them, so let's roll that now. I do want to get it across to you that just because an album appears on this list or in the honorable mentions, it doesn't mean that I necessarily hate that album or have an extreme dislike for it. It's just that sometimes these albums float by and do so little for me, or else they just really built me up and everybody hyped it up and then I listened and it let me down. So that's why these appear here. Keep in mind that everything is just my own personal opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below which albums disappointed you the most this year. Drop a like on this video, subscribe if you're new, and here is my number 10 selection. Okay, Chris Carrabba, you're just gonna bring back Dashboard Confessional after a 9-year gap in between albums, and what do we get for waiting that long? Only 9 new songs that clock in at just under 30 minutes. At number 10, clocking the list first, we have Crooked Shadows by former emo band Dashboard Confessional. I'm not exactly sure what to call them at this point because this album really is kinda all over the place. Its bipolar tendencies aren't exactly that bad, I suppose, in and of themselves. If it's going to try a lot of different things, then that's okay, but it samples it and it never really goes anywhere with the sound. It doesn't take the electronic or EDM inspiration and do something cool. It doesn't take the pop influences and hone them into a song that definitely feels like Chris Carrabba. It just instead feels a little bit like everything else. This was clearly seen with the lead single and opening track, We Fight, which was a try-hard wannabe anthem, and the problems and the woes just continue stacking up from there. There's okay and actually half-decent songs here that I kinda like Heartbeat Here, and even Open My Eyes, parts of Be Alright, but even still, on the tracks that I do like, minus Heartbeat Here, which I feel is the best song on the album, I just feel like the songs were underwritten, and it truly proves that Chris Carrabba is capable of so much more. One of the world's biggest pop stars, Ariana Grande, had a tumultuous but also successful year in 2018. Dating back to 2017, she was dealing with PTSD because of the attacks at her concert in Manchester in the UK, and then she came back strong with the lead single No Tears Left to Cry, and I was incredibly excited after hearing that and God Is a Woman. Both of those singles are fantastic, but as I actually played the album Sweetener, I couldn't help but feel Pharrell Williams and his production style did not suit Ariana Grande well. So many critics absolutely adored this album for whatever reason, considering they've been lukewarm to her in the past. They like anything that's a little bit experimental or out there, but I just felt like this bassy style and the pitch-shifting vocals and the weird tinkering of sounds in the background of the tracks, it just didn't flow with Ariana's voice. I'm not calling this a straight-up bad album, even though there are bad songs on here like The Light Is Coming featuring Nicki Minaj, but this is a record that just overall felt kinda lackluster to me, like the appeal kinda wore off after hearing it a couple of times. At number 8, we have alternative band Wet and their album Still Run. This was a major disappointment for me because I really did like the band's debut album in 2016. It was an early surprise. It came out in the first month of the year. And fast forwarding, I liked the single, There's a Reason. In fact, it clocked my top 50 best songs of 2018. So very clearly I was excited to hear this. But playing through this album, I just couldn't help but feel bored. There's not a ton for me to say about this because there's not much going on. It's 10 songs long, just over 30 minutes, and really, it's so forgettable that I can't name the majority of the tracks. As I've said time and time again, being forgettable is the biggest crime that music can commit. At least if it's awful, it sticks in my mind like, holy God, I don't want to hear that again. But with being forgettable, it's like, oh yeah, you put out an album, and I really didn't care. How do you follow up a debut album that pretty much took over the UK and even the US for a long time? James Bay had that question to follow up after The Chaos and the Calm was a huge force to be reckoned with. We had Hold Back the River and other singles charting worldwide. And what does he do on album number 2? Well, he gives us a great single in the form of Pink Lemonade, gets everybody's expectations up high, and then just drops us like a disco ball shattering into a million pieces. I honestly feel like we're just wandering through a vast wilderness and walking circles as we go for nearly 50 minutes with the singer-songwriter on this outing. And as he tears through some of these songs like Wild Love and oh my god, Sugar Drunk High, which please, I do not want to hear that one again. It's clear that he was trying to tackle like a kind of electro R&B gospel tinge thing. There's way too many backing choirs on this record, and Electric Light as a whole, very clearly to me at least, deserves a spot at this list at number 7 just for the sheer fact that it had so much potential. And if you can write a song like Pink Lemonade and then continue to put out other bad songs that just don't even hold a candle to it, you've got a huge problem. I really hate to put this one on the list, but at number 6 we have The Now Now, the quick follow-up to Humans by Gorillaz. Obviously, Jamie Hewitt and Damon Albarn came together for another project pretty quickly, and this one just felt a little rushed, sure, but also just kind of there. Like, it exists. It's just riding on a very smooth plateau, and there's nothing really all that disappointing, I suppose, going on at its core, like at surface level, but I think the disappointment for me sets in the fact that you're coming off of kind of an ambitious album, Humans, that went for a lot of dominating styles, and at least they had kind of a thundering appeal and performance that was going on, a lot of guests there, and I do like the fact that this one was stripped back and it's more of 2D, we get to focus on Albarn's vocals there. And on this one, we do get some standout cuts. Trans was still fantastic. It holds up to this day. I do feel like Humility with George Benson, the more I played it, the more it kind of lost its shine that it initially had. Sukai was a nice album closer that actually put a lot together. A lot of heart, I feel, went into that song. But I listened through some of the others like Magic City and Kansas, and I just feel like I'm sitting there, just kind of like this in this position, like, okay, this is fine, but I also don't feel like it's pushing any boundaries. It just feels like they played it safe on this album. And I hate to say that for as ambitious as Gorillaz have been in the past, but this just felt pretty tame. Quickly following up the success of their bubbly and honestly really good album Landmark in 2017, the indie rock and alternative act Hippocampus put out their sophomore LP, Bambi. This effort to me definitely felt a bit concerning right off the bat because as you could see the songwriting methods and the utilization of certain instruments like synthesizers and other electronic programming that just hadn't been in their sound that much before, it just felt like they kinda did it in an overblown way. Now, there's some great songs that automatically caught my attention. The first track that I heard from the album actually was the next to last song on it, Golden. It's a fantastic little cut, definitely not a song of the year or anything, but still very solid. It's catchy enough, and it felt like it kind of captured what Hippocampus had done in the past with a bit of a new twist. And I also loved Why Even Try, which was downright depressing, but the rest of the album, for the most part, I found myself sitting on the fence with. I know a lot of people that loved Landmark did not care for this much at all, and I can understand why. It just kind of felt dry and lifeless in comparison. The songs like Doubt, Anxious, and even Think It Over just felt a little bit out there and a little bit too stretched, if you will. It's like you're trying to spread that last little bit of butter on the toast and you don't quite have enough, and that's just what this album felt like. I don't exactly understand why they maybe felt the need to rush out a new album. I could have waited at least another year, and I feel like most fans could as well, but back-to-back years releasing just didn't exactly work out all that well for Hippocampus. This album has pretty much had its position locked in from the time it released, and here it is at number 4, Pray for the Wicked by Panic at the Disco. You might be wondering why this isn't higher up on the list, and honestly, it's because my expectations weren't exactly roaring and soaring here. This is an album that came off of 2016's kinda okay release, Death of a Bachelor. It had some great songs on there, and it honestly did grow on me over time. I cannot say similar things for this album here. Pray for the Wicked felt like an underdone album full of like jazzy 60s big band leaning style production and horns, and they were just using them on pretty much every track here except for Dying in LA, which had a very weird voice moment there from Brendan Urie. He's a very talented vocalist, and that carries, I guess, the majority of this record, the merits that it does have, but overall, this is a bad album coming from Panic at the Disco, especially by their standards. I personally am very disappointed in this because I pretty much love most things leading up to Too Weird, and even so much of Too Weird, and parts of Death of a Bachelor, but this, you're really having to pick apart to find anything that's really that great. And I know a lot of people complain about High Hopes being repetitive and all that stuff, but I actually feel like it works well as an anthemic style track that just boasts and have fun, and Say Amen Saturday Night is fantastic as well. Outside of that, there's really nothing for me to write home positively about. It opens up with Fuck a Silver Lining, which is okay enough, I guess, but still it feels a little bit underperformed and it gets very monotonous after about 45 seconds, and then we tear through some of the cringeworthy choruses like Roaring Twenties, Roll Me Like a Joint Cause I Wanna Go Home, no fucking thank you. One of the Drunks definitely has some catchy verses, but I don't care for that super processed chorus that has the layered vocals, and Dancing's Not a Crime just feels like any other kind of party song ever, and for the amount of party songs that are here, the vibe that the album was going for, this record simply isn't fun. Hanging a 3 spot on us, we have 21st Century Liability, the debut album by the UK young gunner Young Blood. This is an album that I definitely expected more from. I discovered his music because I heard Tin Pan Boy in the 13 Reasons Why soundtrack, and I thought to myself, this actually sounds pretty cool, and he's got a lot of energy, he's trying to combine like rap and rock and maybe some elements of punk, and he keeps acting like he's doing that on all of his songs, but he's really not, and I found this album so completely lifeless. As I listened through this and heard him discussing things like on Machine Gun Fuck the NRA, I didn't feel the heat that I should be feeling from a title like that. It's like there's empty promises on this record. And you listen through, and they just feel like you've kind of hit a stalemate, like nothing is really advancing or going forward. And he does include that song from his old EP, I Love You, Will You Marry Me, which is actually pretty sincere. It's inspired by some real events, and that's cool. Polygraph Eyes as well, those are back-to-back moments that work quite well on this album. But outside of that, I don't see that much worth getting hyped about, which is ironic considering there's a song called Die for the Hype. Well, here he comes again to shit all over Mania. You're just a hater. You hate Fall Out Boy. Are you done yet, child? Can I speak my piece? You know we had to do it to Fall Out Boy. At number 2 on the list today, we have the disheartening album Mania by the mainstays of the scene. Whatever scene that is these days, I'm not exactly sure. Initially slated to be released in the fall of 2017, the band delayed Mania because they wanted to work on it and make sure it was perfect. And after hearing the final and finished product, I don't hear that they took their time at all. In fact, it still feels like they threw out the good ideas. Just listen to the demo of Church and then compare it to the final version. And it's like, how did we go from this story being about Patrick Stump's dad to getting something that sounds like he's saying, well, if you were Church, I'd get on my knees? Like, what kind of lyric is that? In fact, it's probably one of the worst I heard all year. Sunshine Riptide featuring Burna Boy had these horrible reggae vibes, and Burna Boy felt like he was put on there for some sort of street cred. And then we've got Heaven's Gate, which feels like Patrick Stump is really forcing out that line, "Give me a boost," which just feels so awkwardly juxtaposed with the rest of the song, and overall, it already felt like it was ripping off "Can't Help Falling in Love" and other old throwback styled songs. It's just that this album, it feels like it's all over the place. It opens up with like 4 solid bangers. "Stay Frosty," "Royal Milk Tea," I really actually like outside of the "Are you smelling that shit" line, which is just so whack. I hate that. It kind of ruins the experience for me. I really tried to hold out hope for Mania and that they actually would take their time. Perhaps they would scrap Young and Menace, the abomination, the absolute sin and stain on their career that is, and also Champion, which is probably the most lifeless and boring, like, trying to be hype song that I've ever heard. Like, really, if you can live through this, you can do anything? Never heard that before. And then they come back with an album that just feels like it was half done. Like, you threw it in the microwave for a few seconds more, and that still didn't get the job done. It's not cooked yet, guys. Justice for Bishop's Knife Trick, though, it's stuffed right after Young and Menace, which I don't blame you if you didn't finish that track, but at least skip to the next one and hear the proper closer here, because it is a very nicely done track with some actual good lyrics on it. That's something that I can't say for a lot of this album. The most disappointing album for 2018 for yours truly, John from ARTV, was indeed Muse's Simulation Theory. Muse are one of my top 10 favorite bands, so it definitely kills me a little bit inside to actually place this on the list, but Simulation Theory is just not a very good album. I don't want to sit here and say it's the worst thing ever. I'm not going to lament it in that way. It just took the 80s worship and other random sounds, bringing in like Shellback and Timbaland producing some of these tracks like Break It To Me, which sounds like a bad Rage Against the Machine cover, especially with that guitar tone. It just doesn't suit Muse well, and I feel like Muse fans just go crazy for really anything they do, and to an extent, I get that. You want to support your guys, and I still love Muse. It just feels like they keep trying to do so much in the realm of massive. Like, they're always trying to go all out, and it's like, what technology can we take on next? And here, they put out a loose concept album, not really one overall though, according to Matt Bellamy and the rest of the guys. They said that Simulation Theory has the ideas of artificial intelligence and other things, and it's like, is it gonna take over? And it incorporates like synthwave and also new wave, alternative rock, and electronic music, and it kind of puts it all together in one big basket of I don't exactly know what the fuck's going on here. Algorithm opens this record up and definitely shows a lot of promise. I love the squealing synthesizers there, and it feels like there's something dark and ominous coming our way, and even the closing track, The Void, has grown on me somewhat, but overall, even revisiting this album just before I filmed, I just didn't really get the whole vibe that they were going for. It feels like a lot of people are connecting with it, but for me being a hardcore Muse fan, I wanted to hear at least some more riffs, at least something more explosive, and we occasionally get that. Thought Contagion I think is solid, minus some of the wah-ohs that are thrown in there. They're okay, but the Millennial Whoop kills it a little bit for me. And then we've got Blockades, which I absolutely am down with, but then you've got such generic stuff as Get Up and Fight, which the chorus on that, I don't understand why that exists, and featuring Tuvlo there, it doesn't have any appeal. It's obviously all up to personal taste, but this album just didn't exactly quench that thirst that I had for new Muse, and I really felt like the way they went about releasing so many songs and other things, it just kind of killed the hype overall for me, and the record is too spotty and inconsistent for me to even want to come back to. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to my top 10 most disappointing albums of 2018. What albums let you down? Let me know in the comments section down below, along with your thoughts on my list today. Keep in mind, everything I said is just my own personal take and opinion, and if you liked any of these albums, then feel free to let me know why. Don't forget to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new in town, and if you're able to, grab some of my merch to help support the channel. It's the second link down below. You could go a step further and support me on Patreon at the top link down below, or else this annotation in the corner. It helps harder videos like this keep coming each and every month on both of my channels. Other than that, if you would like to see all of my year-end countdowns, then tap this playlist right here, or tap here for another recent video. Socials will be in the description down below, and I'll see you soon for more right here on ARTV.